evening. So, being a grandma, I had to do a little bit of bragging, right? Um, and what was so cool about it is my daughter's birthday was Tuesday. So here she was in labor in the hospital, and her best birthday present, I think, of all time is that she had a new son added to their family. So we had a birthday party in the hospital the next day, and here's Nicole with baby Quinn and her other kids, her two other sons and daughter, and her wonderful husband. So I just had to take a moment to share that exciting news with you. But we will get into questions. And so tonight, what I've done is I've taken some questions that I just recently, in the past week or so, have gotten from families and put them together on a slide so we can look at it. And let's see, I wonder how we're doing here live. But if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and type it in. And while we're waiting for people to do that, I'll just go ahead and give us some questions that I've recently had. So the first question is, what do I do if the district said there's a new state regulation and now my child no longer qualifies for special education services? So you can imagine if you were a parent and you got a note home saying, oh, there's this new, policy. I'm sorry, your son won't, be able to get any special ed services anymore. Now, of course, the mom was kind of panicked and immediately got in touch with me. And what I told her, and what I always tell parents when you hear in a IEP meeting or from a conversation with a teacher, if they make a reference to a new policy and how we have to do things this way now, is to always ask for a written copy of that policy, regulation, or law that they're referring to. Because what I find is, ironically, a lot of times when you ask for something, and you want the written copy of it, you'll find that there really isn't anything in writing about that new policy or that new procedure. So if it's not in writing, it's not something that really exists, and you would need to have some further conversations with your IEP team. However, there can be times when your state Department of Education has revised their state rules or regulations, and you want to make sure that you know about that. So if there is something new, the district can give you a copy of that in writing, and you need to take it home and read through it and see if it makes sense to you. Now, unfortunately, so many times the regulations and the laws that we get are written in legalese, and it's like beyond us to try and figure out what they really mean. So if you have a close friend that is able to help you interpret all that language, call your friend. If you have an advocate that you work with, get in touch with your advocate and make sure you understand what that new rule or policy is that they were talking about. The second part of that question is, if you hear from a teacher or from somebody on the IEP team that your child no longer qualifies, it can't just be, poof, your child now no longer gets these services. There's a process that has to take place. And so you want to make sure that an IEP team is called together. A lot of times there needs to be additional testing to see if your child is still eligible for special ed services. If your child still has a disability, if that disability still impacts his or her education, and if they need specialized instruction in order to make progress in the general ed curriculum, then your child still qualifies for special education. So know that there's a process. It's not just this easy thing that somebody will come in and decide one day that your child doesn't qualify and his IEP gets yanked from him. And I'm going to look and see, because I think Yael's also joined us. So Yael, she is an advocate friend of mine in Colorado. I don't know, Yael, are you hiding from the camera? If she wants to jump on, and she can also participate as we go through our questions here. So let me check my Facebook page and see. We have a couple people on live. Natalie, I hope all my technology didn't hinder you being able to see the Facebook live show. So I hope you're on here still. What we're going to do is, I don't see any other questions from our live audience right now. So I'll go ahead and go through another question that I recently got from a family. And as you're listening in, if you think of some questions that you have about your specific situation, this is the night. This is our question answer night. So this is the time for you to get your questions answered. So here's the second question. I've been working with a family in another state that has a student in middle school. And in their school, they are like so technology oriented that each student has their own iPad that the school provides. Most of the teaching during the day and the homework assignments are done on the student's iPad. And I had a parent talk to me and say, well, my child hates using the iPad or any other technology. So what can we do? I mean, this is about all that the school is doing nowadays. So I think whenever I hear from a parent that their child is saying such and such, I always want to first figure out, well, exactly, what is the reason why your child hates using the iPad, or what's the reason that they don't like using the technology at school. So what we found out as I was having a conversation with their child is that just does not fit his learning style. And I think sometimes we are so used to our young kids using technology so freely and so often that it kind of amazes us that there would be a student that wouldn't like having his own iPad to use for homework or for classwork. But this, in fact, was this student's, situation. It wasn't something that he liked using. I mean, he's not a video game player or anything like that. And it's also something that was really hard for him to figure out all the steps in doing it. So what we did is we called an IEP meeting and we said, we want to add a couple of accommodations. And we want the accommodation of, he has a set of textbooks at home that he can use to reference. So if he has homework assignments, he's not stuck with only using the iPad, as his source of information, but he's got actual old school, real life textbooks that he can look at. And then the other thing that he talked about when we were having a conversation was, I have to log on, I have to find the teacher's, class, I have to find where the assignment is for that lesson for that day. Then there's also usually other links that we have to use. And I just get way too confused and overwhelmed. So besides having a new accommodation to have that extra set of textbooks at home, we said, how about if we write a step-by-step checklist that he can use? Because he's one of these kids that loves checklists and he can mark off what he's done. So we broke it down into real specific small steps. And now he uses that checklist whenever he has to go on the iPad during class time for some, in-class assignments. And that's made like a world of difference for him. So we need to, I think, a couple lessons here. We need to always make sure that we talk to the student and get their understanding and their perspective of things instead of trying to second guess students, and see what ideas that they have for solving situations or different problems. Because oftentimes students will have more ideas than we do. And I see Yael's on, so Yael, cool. So is your microphone working?
Yes, it is now. I didn't even realize until you said before that I was on, that I was still on. So I quickly logged on, but then I was on twice and had to go back and change things. An interesting tech night. So
I
I
know.
have some interesting things that have happened this week. One of them was that I was in a meeting where the special ed teacher actually admitted that she was not working with the child. She was trying to get out of something else she had done wrong and literally said, well, in the last 3 weeks, I've only seen her for maybe like 2 minutes, just to ask her a quick question. And we're just like sitting there going, did she really admit that she's not giving the minutes? And we were wondering, I was trying to figure out the FERPA rules for how can we get to see her logs pretty fast, at least the hours,
Right.
without a lot of notice so that she doesn't go back and recreate it.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, when you do ask for records, a lot of times the districts will come back and say, well, we have 45 days, and that's what the FERPA
Yeah.
rule is, and, to give us time to, compile all the records. And so what I've started to do in the letter that I give parents to request for records is I say, I understand in FERPA, the school district has 45 days. However, in IDEA, which is the federal special ed law, it says that parents can have access to these records before an IEP meeting so they can meaningfully participate. So that's one way that I've been able to get around that 45-day
Right.
rule that FERPA has.
Right. And I was thinking, I said to the mom, we can see this before an IEP meeting. And I know we just had one yesterday, but gee, if we just set one up for next week, they're going to have to give this to us.
Right.
Except that we don't necessarily get her notes if she doesn't share with anyone. And she
Right.
may make up the hours. I mean, she could just make this all up. But on the other hand, she just said this on a recording. So I'm kind of like, I'm hoping the principal didn't call back today because she's trying to figure this stuff out. The other thing, but yeah, that's what I was thinking too, of just let's call for an IEP meeting and they have to share it with us. And then the other thing that I had happen today was interesting. It's a child with dyslexia in a district where they just don't do very much at all. And they suggested that they do a program, which is a very good program, but literally each person who's training the teachers, she isn't trained herself. She's never taught the program. She's never gone to a course. And they're kind of sitting there saying, well, I guess we don't have to give it to him if you don't want it without training. And I was thinking, wow, that's a weird place to be. So do we want it without training because it would be better than nothing? Or do we just now at this point say, hey, somebody has to go take the training?
Right. And I think that's something that probably other parents come up against too is, if they know there's a certain type of multisensory program that works with their child, most districts won't want to name that certain reading program or whatever in the IEP. But if you can describe the components of that program, but then like you said, you still need people that are trained in it. And that's where I think a lot of teachers don't even understand in the IEP that you can write in staff training. So I'll also talk to parents about, it's not just services and supports for your child, but if the teachers or the paras or related service people need additional training, but that can be written in the IEP. I always try to make it real specific as to who's going to do the training, what it's going to entail, what the follow-up coaching is going to be like. But all of those components can be written in the child's IEP, and then the school is obligated to provide it. So yeah, without training, it's going to be really a challenge for any program to be implemented with, fidelity. So that would be yikes. I know we have another parent on here, Kara, and she has been kind of one of our faithful listeners. And I wanted to ask her a question, even though this is questions and answers from parents. But Kara, I know that you guys had before had that Angel Sense device that your child was using. You got a lot of pushback from the school about the listen in component, even though you were going to disable it during the school day. So Kara, I don't know if you feel comfortable. I know it's been kind of a back and forth, hot discussion with your district, but if you have any insight or additional things that you'd like to tell us about or questions about that, feel free to type that in the comments, and we'll see if we can help provide some answers for you. So while we're waiting for Kara to do that, I wanted to show you another question that I recently got. And this was something that a mom just texted me the other day. And she said that she just sometimes gets so angry in IEP meetings and just doesn't know what to do, especially when she sits across from the teacher and the teacher is almost constantly rolling her eyes at the parent. And I so identified with this. I don't know if any of you else have this same trigger, but when I'm in an IEP meeting, I know as a parent, when I was there with my husband for, advocating for our son, sometimes we would have a teacher that would do that, roll their eyes, and it would just like bug me. And it's like, what am I going to do about this? And I'm usually the person that's pretty open and honest, but I didn't want to be rude during the meeting. I just had this conflict. And so finally what I discovered is when somebody does, some kind of irritating behavior like that, I just call it as it is. And so what I did was I just said, I think I've noticed that you're rolling your eyes. Can you please tell us what you're thinking? And then I pause and I wait. I give them time to answer. Because what I found so many times when parents ask questions during IEP meetings, they hardly give the person a chance to respond before they start going on to another topic and start talking about that and how, what they're upset about. But what we need to do is when we ask questions, we need to stop, pause, give the person a chance to respond. So when somebody is rolling their eyes at you, I just call it like it is. And I say, I notice you're rolling your eyes. Can you tell us what you're thinking? Because I want that trust and that communication to be there. But when we see other people with body language that's really irritating for us, I think we need to talk about that before we can move on. I mean, another situation that you see a lot with cell phones is maybe during the IEP meeting, one or more people keep looking at their cell phone and maybe, typing in a text message or just checking it constantly. And so again, that would be something that I would, make a statement without any judgment, but I would say, I've noticed that you're looking at your cell phone a lot. Can you tell me, is this a time where we should, talk about rescheduling the meeting so we can come back and focus on our discussion? And then I would stop and pause and give them wait time because I want to hear their answer. So, yeah, Elle, I know you're an advocate in Colorado. So I don't know if you have any of your own personal triggers or have worked with parents that, something is really irritating and how you help them kind of resolve that at that meeting table.
You mean if it happens right there on the spot?
Right, right.
Because I tell parents at the beginning that if they're getting too triggered and they're doing something I don't want to, that I'm planning on kicking them. So not to worry about it, but if I do that, to please stop.
Yes.
It's
So it's
hard.
always that can be your strategy, right? To make sure you sit next to each other. So instead of passing notes, you can a little nudge under the table.
Exactly. Especially too, since I tape all my meetings and we don't want the parents sounding really out of control just in case we might ever need those.
Oh, exactly. So Kara did type in a question here, or comment. She said, okay, I don't really have a question today. However, we could not get the school to work anything out with him being able to have it unless it's disabled. After we did do it for a few hours, let me go on here. He was that when he was at school, they still questioned us every day about it. Also, we couldn't find a lawyer who was willing to help us file anything to the state or against the district. Now we have moved into a new district who has no problem with the full use. So, all right to Kara and her husband for being strong advocates. And I know that I had had some conversations with Kara on Facebook. She had, was talking to some different attorneys. And I always feel like when a parent is represented by an attorney, that as an advocate, I step back. But I just wanted to follow up with her story because I know at one time on Facebook she was saying that they were considering moving to a different district. And, that's not something that all families can do. But sometimes that gets to be your last resort when you've had lots of conversations. I know there was conversations at this Board of Education in this particular district. And when you can't get resolution, sometimes moving to a new place makes a difference. Not always is that new district going to be any different. But in this case, Kara found that it really was helpful. And now her son can use that Angel Sense device. So that is like terrific news. I love it. I love it. I love it when things turn out well, right? Well,
Have been a few times when I have recommended to parents when it's a last resort and I know it's not going to work. And it feels terrible because it's not going to work for all these other kids either. But there may be 3 times where I've just looked at parents and said, you need to move. It's that bad. In some areas, you're allowed to change districts without having to move. I know in Colorado, they don't have to do that. Or they can let you come in and then they can say they have too many people and get rid of you.
right, right. Yeah, so that's something that you want to really explore because moving that can be a big expense for families. It can be a lot of turmoil for the family and the student. So you want to weigh your options. But yeah, sometimes you can apply to, have your child served at another school, even though it's not within your district, and see if they will accept your child. Usually, then you have to provide the transportation, but there are, sometimes situations where staying there and you're always having so many roadblocks brought up that you need to take that option of, going elsewhere. And that's a really hard decision. And I have so many parents that will ask me, like, what's the best district? I just had a mom the other day email me about she's going to be moving to Idaho and she wants to know which district would be best. And that's such a hard question to answer because it really depends on I think, the building principal and the culture that they, kind of permeates the building, and that the administrator, how he encourages teachers to meet kids' needs. If you have a positive, involved principal, that can make a huge difference. It depends on the teacher. And you can go to a school where it's like highly recommended, and then the principal might the next year like take a position in a different school, or the teacher might retire. So there's no guarantee that even though a school or a particular district has a good reputation, that it means it's going to be a good match for your child. So that's something that can be really hard for parents to weigh and to try and make that decision. But that's sometimes what we have to do for our kids. So I was going to see if we have any other questions. So, Kara, let us know if that brought up any other questions in your mind. But I'm just excited that your son is doing well in the district, the new district, and that they don't have a problem with him using that new type of GPS device. So that's, I'm sure, makes you guys feel so much better and feel like he's going to be safe at school again. So kudos to you and your husband for fighting that fight. Sometimes it has to be that way, right? So the other thing I wanted to look at is we're almost done with our broadcast tonight. So remind friends, if they weren't able to come on live, that this will stay on my Facebook page and it will be up as a replay. So you can always come back and watch it again, or somebody can watch it as a replay. The other possibility is if you think of questions after you've watched the video and you go, why didn't I think of that question to ask? I'm always open to talking to parents on the phone. My number is posted on the slide here. It's 208-340-5874. I always give parents a free 30-minute phone consultation. And you'll be surprised in 30 minutes how much we can talk about, how many issues we can try and resolve. And I always try to end the phone call with some concrete actions that you can take, so you walk away feeling like there is something I can do about this situation. So, feel free to give me a call. I wanted to let you know about next week's show on, I think it's February 6th, which is next Thursday evening. We're going to have a special guest, Julie Costin. She's a professor at Syracuse University in New York. And Julie is a professor there. She also is an expert witness that testifies for parents in a lot of due process hearings actually across the country. And she is an internationally known speaker. And later in February, she's going to be a speaker at Peak Parents Conference in Denver. So I'm really thrilled that she has the time to come on to our Facebook Live show next week. And she has a series of books that she's written. So this book is going to be a giveaway for next week. So this is called The Paraprofessional's Handbook for Effective Support in Inclusive Classrooms. And we're going to be talking the whole month of February about paraeducators. I know this is something that a lot of parents have questions about. How can I get a one-on-one para for my child? How can I make sure the para is actually helping and not hindering? So I've asked Julie to come on and talk about some strategies that she's experienced and know work well. So paraeducators can be helpful instead of harmful when you're trying to include a child in a general ed classroom. So next Thursday, make sure you come back here, 7 o'clock Mountain Time. We'll have Julie Costin on for our interview guest, and we'll also be giving away one of her books. So you want to make sure that you're here with us so you can sign up for the giveaway. But in the meantime, I know that we all have busy days and busy nights, so I appreciate you being able to spend some time here with us. And until next week, next Thursday, keep on speaking up and speaking out for your child and making that difference for him. Thank you and take care.